Hello everyone, Zellarinth here, and today I'm going to take a look at the Hydro team and kind of some of my ideas on building a team for the future and who you may want to plan for, who's coming out. Big thing is Hydro was missing a lot of components until recently. They just had a release of a new healing unit, Springfield, who came out, who is going to fit into that Hydro team. And she kind of puts everything together, and you kind of get an idea the direction Hydro is going as a team. From what I can tell, they are not the biggest, they're not going to be the largest damage wise when it comes to killing enemies, but they have they probably are going to be the most tanky team in the group. They're going to be extremely hard to kill if you're doing a full Hydro team. And we'll kind of take a look at that here in a second. The first thing we want to know is that Tololo is the one that we already have that you can get on the standard. Big thing is they always say that she's really good starting out, but as you get farther in content, she kind of starts to fall off. Big things have changed with this most recent update to her, that she's just like a lot of the other standard units, gotten a massive buff. So we'll take a look at that with her. And then there's actually another Hydro unit that's in the standard banner. And one of the nice things we'll know about her with Sabrina is that she can actually be farmed when you do the boss missions. The boss fights here, as you're doing them, you're going to get this battle log trading currency. And with this, you can actually buy the currency needed to make dupes, as well as make your first copy of her. You need 30 copies of this item to make a copy of a unit. It gives you 5 per drop. You can get 3 of these a month. So every 2 months, you can get a copy of Sabrina, which means you will actually be able to eventually max her out on her dupes. So right off the bat, you have 2 standard units that make up the Hydro team, and currently I would say they are still a core member of the team based on what is currently available. And so we'll go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet that I've been kind of using to look at future units and what's coming up, and we'll kind of go over all the different changes. All right, so first I want to take a look at as the CN banners. And while we know that the order that we see here that they came out in CN is not going to be the same for us on the global side, but it can kind of give us a good idea of how things progressed on the CN side. And it could potentially see some mistakes they may have made that we could see them rectifying. So the big thing you'll see with Hydro is none of the first units that came out were Hydro themselves. And then we have Suomi and Ulrid right here, which came out for us starting out in global. And the first Hydro unit that came out was Zahui here, the limited unit. And then just recently we had Springfield who came out. Now, one thing I see there is kind of looking at the other elements. We have the burn side of things. We had the burn healer right here. And then Vector was kind of that final piece for that support side of things. So there's burn. So we have Ice. Ice seems to be the one that came out with all of its units the quickest. You have Ice with here, Makito, and then Dushnavaya, or however you say her name right here. You had Lightning that had Lena, and then immediately after Jang Yu. And then I believe there's another one. You have Belka and Andra. So there's been a decent amount of Lightning units that have come out. And they kind of came out to before and to after. And then you have Corrosion, which we know with Cluke is just explosive and massive there. And so Hydro has been the most underrepresented of them. And I would actually suspect that potentially we will see one of these 2 units. I would really like it to be Springfield. But I could see them bringing one of these up, like having them being a little bit earlier, just to kind of give a little bit more representation to Hydro early on. Because it's them, and then Corrosion wasn't really shown heavily until we got they got Cluke, but they're definitely not bringing Cluke out soon or quickly. At least hope not, because a lot of people are definitely wanting to save up for her. But so I actually suspect if there was one that they were going to bring up from down here, it would probably be a Hydro unit. So you just kind of want to be prepared for that if you're wanting to go heavy into the Hydro side of things. So let's go ahead and take a look at the spreadsheet here and kind of look at the Hydro units and what we're looking at with the team. So the first unit here we're going to take a look at is Tololo, and I'm actually going to do separate videos on each individual unit. So this is just a quick look and kind of what the unit represents for the team. This isn't going to be in depth looking at everything they do and all their capabilities. So just know I'll have the spreadsheet in the description if you want to look at it before I get a video out on them. And I've already done Tololo and Sabrina. But as we once we know the banners for the other two come out, I will be making videos on them at that point. Now for Tololo, we already know the big thing with her is that she was the best unit to get for being in the beginning because she can move through content really quickly because she has that extra turn. But then she kind of was in a position where she started falling off because that's a one-trick thing that is less useful as you get farther towards the end game and you're looking more to do like those support actions so that you can constantly be doing damage every turn. Well, you were kind of limited on how often you were getting that extra turn with her. They just recently, in the most recent update, Tololo did get a big improvement, like we're seeing with a lot of standard units, which she got this expansion key here. And the big thing is it says after using an active skill increases contamination gauge by 2 points. If any allied units except self deals turbid, so that's hydro damage, decreases the cooldown of black hole inversion by 1 turn. And so if you're in a full hydro team, that last part there basically makes it where you're going to have this black hole skill more readily available if you're using all hydro units. But the other big thing and big part of it is getting that contamination gauge, which is, I mean, that's your skill points. I mean, it's translated a little bit different than what we see in global, but that's the skill points to use skills if the skill requires it. And so you can get 2 there, and with the black hole one being reduced in cooldown, if you're countering an enemy's weakness, increases the gauge by another 2 points. So you'll be able to run this a lot more often. What this is going to open up and what it brings capability-wise for her and how it's a massive buff is with those 2 things, you should be able to get her extra turn every turn now. So usually you're not able to get it every turn. Now she should almost always get to go twice per turn if you have the right setup. And the big reason for that is because this black hole, which you're going to be able to cast more often, gives her those 2 points if you counter an enemy's weakness. And then we have Sabrina, which everybody will be able to get, has a very unique skill on her. If you go to her passive here, Undercut, I don't know what it's called in game. It's probably different in the game itself, but this is basically what it is it applies dampness to enemies on this tile, and it inflicts hydro weakness to the enemy standing on it at the end of their action, and is considered a hydro type tile. Big thing is Sabrina can make anybody weak to hydro, and since she can do that, that means Tololo can pretty much always be triggering this countering enemy's weakness, and thus that's how you're going to be able to keep your skill points coming in to be able to have her extra turn every turn. And so right there, massive buff. Don't know how she's going to compare to someone, say, like Quan Zhu in terms of being able to do a lot of damage. But as we'll see as we look at the other 2 units, the Hydro team is not about being the biggest damage dealers. They're able to do good damage, but I see them as being like your just cannot die units. You're fighting bosses and enemies that do a lot of damage. Hydra is going to be the one you're going to want to use against them. Now I'm saying that because when you go to the unit Zahui, I don't know how to say this name. I'm terrible with names, but she is got some stuff that helps with not only healing your team a little bit, but also preventing the enemies from healing. Because not only do I think they're going to be extremely tanky, they also are more about whittling the enemies down. So enemies that have a lot of self-heals, they are able to prevent them from doing a significant amount of healing to them. And that can make them overall better than another unit in certain scenarios where you're needing to do damage, but not only do a lot of damage, but also prevent them from healing it back up. And so another thing is you'll see she's not the best of units because one of her big cons is doesn't provide really any damage at all, very, very low, but does have the ability to put a debuff on the enemy that when attacked, your teammates will get 20% of their attack back as a heal. And so it's basically a lifesteal that can be applied. And then also does the hydro damage, so it's triggering the other passive, so on Tololo, helping her. And then you have the other big thing on here, which is, yeah, the able to put dampness on them, which is the preventing them from healing 40%. And then there is some action support within her kit as well. But the big thing it says is a big con is there is a lot of dupes that you're going to want to kind of get the utility, not completely needed. I suspect the biggest thing that is missing on the Hydro team, and this is, I would consider Zahui the more flexible spot. You can always replace her probably with some other units in here that could probably provide more utility as long as the other 3 units are Hydro. But I suspect in the future we will end up getting somebody, like if we look at Pridewind on their tier list here, not going to kind of look at where they're positioned. But the big thing is they have a sustain, they have a tank, and they have 2 damage dealers. And they don't have anyone that they consider an amplifier because it's just not enough there. She's kind of just a mix of trying to be a damage dealer and a support, and not the best at both of them. But just knowing that she does have the ability to make it where they are more tanky and reduce the ability for the enemies to heal themselves, amongst a couple other things here. But then we have the newest unit that came out that is, to me, the biggest buff to Hydro alongside Tololo getting her new one, because that was pretty much all they've had in CN for a while until they just got Springfield, which is a healing unit that can provide a lot of buffs to the team. Now, the big thing with Springfield is she is a healer that does a lot of healing. And it's, to me, just kind of looking at it from a numbers perspective, it looks to be on the same level of capabilities as we have with Suomi, except it isn't shields that she does, it's just massive overhealing that she does. So the biggest thing you'll kind of see here is one capability she has is called Buried Bonds. I don't know what it's going to be called in the global version, but this one increases HP equivalent to 100% of the caster's max HP. When this buff expires, the holder restores HP equivalent to the 100% of the caster's attack. It cannot be dispelled. So this is basically, it's not a shield like we see with Suomi. Instead, it's just, hey, your health is now 100% more than what it was. Well, even more than 100%, because she probably is going to have more health than your other units. And it says it is increasing the HP equivalent of the caster's match HP. So you're more than doubling the health pool of your other units that gets this ability. But then you also have the fact when it does expire, because it's like a temporary amount of health, then they immediately restore HP equivalent to 100% of their attack. Now, why this is big is you get that, it's kind of like a temporary shield, but then it's generally, if they don't blow through all 100% of that extra health given, then when a buff expires, it's going to overheal. So it's going to heal more than is needed. And that's where this other buff that she likes to apply in a lot of her skills, Overflowing Care, is aftercare. It basically makes it where that overhealing turns into a buff. And so where it says here, after dealing damage or receiving damage, the holder restores HP equivalent to 5%. So you get health from this as well. You get a little bit of a heal. If the holder's at maximum HP, additional healing is converted into increased hydro damage dealt for every additional healing equivalent to 1.5% of the caster's attack. Increased hydro damage dealt by 1% up to a maximum of 35%. So you can get a 35% increase in damage done if they are getting overhealed. And it is considered a hydro buff. So that's the 2 big things, is the overhealing giving significant buffs. I mean, then you have a lot of the other little things in here. So you have like insight, so she can do more. She has the ability to do an additional action. She maxes out her skill points. She can go again, casting another skill. And a bunch of other little things. Vulnerability, making it where they take more hydro damage. Has the same debuffs like dampness, false intelligence. So increasing the stability damage done. So all around great unit. Has so to me, it's going to be almost on the same level as Suomi, because I mean, it's basically getting a shield when you're basically doubling their effective HP for a good chunk of time. And then once it goes away, it just does a full heal on them. And then you should be able to cast it with the right setup, cast it again immediately. So really nice there. Another really nice thing that she has that I don't know if any other units have. I believe another couple of units might have stuff like this. Well, she does have a summon that is part that I think she summons with her ultimate up here. This summon also does hydro damage. we don't have to kind of go into details on everything it does. It puts like taunts and stuff on the enemy. It says taunt and panic and a couple other little things. But the big thing that I think of with that is how that synergizes with Tololo. Because if you remember with her new upgrade here, that if an allied unit, so allied unit will include the summon, deals hydro damage, decreases the cooldown of Black Hole by 1 turn. What this really opens up is now you have 2 units doing hydro damage with 1 unit. You have Springfield, who could do hydro damage, and she can do it twice because she has additional action built into her kit. Now she can't constantly do it like Tololo can, but she can get additional action, so that's a way to do it. But then she also has that summon that can trigger it as well. So you're kind of getting 2 hits in one with her. And then if you have, then you have Sabrina as your like main tank, and that's why I say that they're going to be super tanky. Sabrina's a tank, she's a healer, and if you have a Zahui with the lifesteal, they're just not going to die, and they're just going to whittle the enemies down over time. But what this does open up is, say you don't want to bring Zahui because she's a little bit on the weaker side, not providing as significant buffs that you want. I think this is more of a flex spot depending on needs. And I do believe another thing, Hydra's going to probably get a dedicated support here in the future as well, I believe. They seem to need that to most of all the units, because I think Hydra still has the least amount of units of all the elements. So the CN will probably see one coming here soon. That would probably be the better replacement for this. But in the time being, you pretty much can just fit in this spot. If you don't need her and you're doing plenty with the others on terms of the Hydra side, I think you can just pretty much bring anyone else that has a utility that you really need for whatever the content you're working on is. And when I'm thinking of other flex units, some of them that come to mind looking through here, one of the big ones I'd say would be like Mekti. It's a corrosion unit, but a lot of stuff that he has in it, he can do a lot of defense down type stuff. So like you have defense down by 20%, a lot of other damage type thing debuffs that will make it so that your Hydra units can do more damage. So I think Mekti is just a good all-around unit for just about any group. It's one I kind of see there. Another one, if you're just trying to amp up having another DPS that on paper doesn't look very good because they don't have an element with Daeon. She is got the most mobility in the game, so if you're needing the mobility to be able to move long distances, you already can kind of get that with Tololo, with her having her extra turn, and now if the new team concept can move really far by just doing 2 turns back to back, you can also bring Daeon in here, who has the highest mobility in the game, and based on here, she can move up to 16 tiles in 1 turn if set up in a specific way. And so you could keep her alongside Tololo, so you can have 2 of them advancing really far if you're needing to do that. So just another one that has a generic no element that you can utilize. You could potentially need more CC type things, so maybe Lena might be an option. And one big thing with her is I believe she actually does have some synergies with Hydro on hers. If the AoE damage... See, it has a trigger here with a voltage where if an AoE attack is electric or Hydra increases the damage dealt to 60%. So I think there's like an electric shock type deal. So Lena may be a really good support. I haven't really seen how they interact. I've just seen that you have this voltage one that could potentially make her extremely useful in the Hydro team herself. But yeah, those are just some of the kind of teammates that I'm seeing. I think that you're very flexible in this one spot, and I just think it really helps having that summon able to do that extra Hydro damage to trigger Tololo's new expansion key, making it where you don't need a complete full team of Hydro to kind of have your Hydro team. You have a really flexible spot to make it work. And that pretty much covers Hydro and what we can expect in the future. Now, I know we're most likely going to get that amplifier, like really dedicated support probably at some point in the near future on a new unit. But right now they are still fairly good with that Tololo upgrade. It makes it where she's significantly better than she was. And then it also, the Hydro is, to me, is the most free-to-play friendly of the group, because you already, 2 of them are already on the standard banner. With one of them, you're able to get max dupes just from grinding the boss fights. And then the other one, a lot of people would have targeted Tololo being their first to to be their first unit that they wanted to get because she was really good for all the running the beginner stuff. And then if you didn't get her that way, you can get her through the selector. So you're already going to be starting out with 2 of the great units. And the only one that I really feel like you need to get a true Hydro team going will be Springfield. She gives that extra oomph needed, especially with the new buff to Tololo to have the Hydro damage being done. And then the other spot is going to be very flexible, where if you want to just take that other Hydro, Zahui, you can bring her, but you have a lot of options. I feel like that you can just bring another dedicated support that can make it where you can do more damage. You can bring in Lena because she has some interactions with Hydro, or you can just bring in another big DPS like one of the elemental ones or non-elemental ones that can do big damage and have high mobility if you need to move around the map a lot, because you have Tololo who already can move around a lot on her own, so having someone else that can move alongside her is always going to be a good thing. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the Hydro team, and I definitely will be getting Springfield for sure when I see her come up. It's like I said, it's the most free-to-play team. Even though I'm a spender, it's definitely going to be a good team just having the ability to fight enemies weak to Hydro quite easily, because I'll have a team that I didn't really have to spend much on at all to have working. So Springfield is going to be a go-to person for me to pull on just for that respect. But yeah, that pretty much covers it. If you like my content, if you could like, comment, subscribe, it really helps. And thanks for watching.